please lead us in the pledge?
Sure, sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which stands
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Suzette, could we do the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Sikich? You're muted.
Jeff, you're muted.
Gotta unmute.
Sorry, present.
Yep. Thank you. Mr. Schultz?
present.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Ustruck?
Here.
Mrs. Justum is excused. Ms. Klug?
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Here.
Mr. Keller?
Here.
President Emmons?
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do we have any additions or modifications to tonight's agenda?
I have nothing.
Okay. All right. Great. We will move on to item number 6, our public comments. If anybody is looking to make public comments, we ask that you please give us your name and address for the record. And then you have up to 3 minutes to address the board. Is anybody online waiting for public comments? Sarah Garcia. You're up.
All right, Sarah Garcia, 13190 Wood Avenue, New Berlin, Wisconsin, 53151. I'm just here to basically discuss, I came the last time concerned about 5 teachers, our principal leaving. We also lost a counselor now at Hoover. And what I was told was teachers all have exit interviews, and that is not the case. I literally talked to every single teacher and counselor and principal, and none of them had exit interviews. And my concern is that we're not finding out what we need to do to hang on to our teachers. And I'm literally worried about the longevity of our educators and the length that they stay here and why they are leaving. I know it's probably somewhat money, but I do know that I was told that the pay freeze was lifted at this point. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned administration is saying one thing and we're not following through. We lost a lot of great educators. We still have a lot of great educators at Hoover, along with the whole entire district, but that is one concern that I have. And I just wanted to go on record and let that be known. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there anybody else online looking to make public comments? Scroll through real quick. Okay. Seeing none, we will then move on to item 7, the superintendent's report. Dr. Lexman.
Great. Thank you. Let me jump into the legislative update. So 7.1, so return to school. And so information was developed by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction in collaboration with educational stakeholders and the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. And that was released to schools. It's called Education Forward. And we're using that document as our primary guiding document as we develop our own returning to school plan. The CDC also has some interesting tools that are available as schools consider reopening options. And there's some news around state revenue, which we've been watching closely. So state revenue right now is lagging by $749 million. And that's for the 1920 year. And so far collected, the tax collections are $749 million behind what Wisconsin took in during the previous fiscal year, according to a new Legislative Fiscal Bureau report. Still, LFB Director Bob Lang noted that it will be late August before the agency has a clear picture on how the economic fallout from COVID-19 has impacted the 2019-20 fiscal year. And that's because, well, the state pushed back the tax filing deadline to July 15, 2020. Those collections will still apply to the 19-20 fiscal year. So we're hoping that that outlook gets a little bit better. in terms of what revenue will be coming into the state, but that would have an impact for us going forward if that lag continues. So it's something that we're going to pay attention to as more information becomes available. And then moving to 7.2, district recognitions. And we're going to announce valedictorians and salutatorians and some top honors from our graduating classes. And if I mispronounce anybody's name, any of our graduates' names, I apologize. But we really want to congratulate our distinguished graduates for the class of 2020. And at West Allis Central, valedictorian Maya Aker and salutatorian William Doro. And our top 10 in the class, Maya Aker, William Doro, Emily Reinhardt, Jose Garcia, Haley Serwinski, Aaron Prinz, Abigail Trug, Cody Nelson, Joseph St. Louis III, and Megan McKee. And then at Nathan Hale High School, our valedictorian, Alyssa Noseworthy, and salutatorian, Nicholas Burgess. And the top 10, Alyssa Noseworthy, Nicholas Burgess, Danielle Krizan, Madison Zieski, Carissa Kaler, Alejandro Gunwald, Claudia Gabriel, Evelyn Parada Custodio, Vincent Zhang, and Brianna North. And we're all proud of our also the graduates and the scholarships they received. So the class of 2020 graduates at West Allis Central, almost $500,000 in scholarships. At Nathan Hale High School, nearly $1.2 million, $2,200 at James Dotke High School, and at Shared Journeys, almost $44,000. So we appreciate all of the groups, organizations, scholarship funds that are supporting our graduates. And we'd like to thank students, families, teachers, counselors, staff, administrators for the dedication to the journey that begins in elementary school, progresses through intermediate school, and concludes in high school. We offer our best wishes to all the graduates in the class of 2020. We hold them in our hearts, and as they take the next steps to pursue their dreams and to live life on their own terms. So again, congratulations to our distinguished graduates and all the graduates that graduated this past Saturday. And then a couple updates. So 7.3, related to public comments from our last meeting, which was Sarah Garcia. I'm gonna have to follow up on the exit interviews. We provide an opportunity for all of our employees that leave the district that are not retiring from the district. So meaning they're making other professional choices. We offer them the opportunity to participate in exit interviews. So I have to follow up to see where we are related to the specific requests around Hoover. But what we do know is from past exit interviews, compensation is the #1 reason that teachers in particular provide as when they make choices about going elsewhere. There is not and has not been a pay freeze. And so the part of what was the question was raised at our last meeting was, when will new teachers be hired? And so with the approval of the preliminary budget at our last meeting, we then started the hiring process for all of the teacher positions we had put on hold, waiting for additional information to come in about the budget. But we feel we're in a reasonably stable condition, and we know that whatever a school looks like in the fall, it certainly will not take fewer adults to manage what we're going to try to do. It'll probably take more. And so we've started filling the positions we had put on hold right after our last meeting a couple weeks ago. And then a few other updates. First, I want to do a big thank you to Greg Gels, Matt Lesser, Jeff Taylor, and in particular Beth Kaler, and everybody else that was part of planning our drive-through, drive-up graduation. And the board members that participated. And the feedback we received was all really positive. I spoke with Jeff Taylor today about it, and he shared some interesting moments at Central where lots of cars decorated, and I heard the same about Kale. So families were having a good time with this. There were families that had hooked up a trailer on the back of a truck, and the family was all on a flatbed trailer. There was a family that came to Central with a boat. They were all sitting in their boat behind a truck. The feedback was that it went well, and I think families had a good time with it, even though it was different. And Jeff Taylor also shared he had a couple families suggest that this is how we should do graduation all the time. So even though it wasn't traditional, it was unique, and I think a really appropriate celebration for our graduates given a unique time. And so again, thank you to everybody that helped. And in particular, another shout out to West Allis Police Department that helped guide traffic. And we had a couple officers that spent the entire day helping us facilitate this. And I did send an email to thank Chief Mitchell and acknowledge some officers that were particularly helpful. And then going to our returning to school, we continue to work on our returning to school plan. We're launching a returning to school planning committee, and that's following surveys of parents and teachers and educational assistants. And those surveys went well. We had 3,272 parent responses, which is about half of our families, which is higher than most surveys that we share with parents. And the response from teachers and educational assistants was 687, which is almost all of them. So that nears 100%. And so that's really helpful information for us. Inside of it, it creates some differences that we're going to need to work through, trying to prioritize first health and safety of students, staff, and our communities, and then trying to honor what parents need and honor what teachers need. And so this committee will help us navigate and build a plan that is responsive as possible. The Returning to School Committee is a large committee. It's a representative group. We have 3 people from the West Allis Health Department. We have parents that are representatives. We have teachers that are representatives. We can't have every parent and every teacher that wants to be on the committee. We had with teachers and educational assistants, I think the number was 68. So they wanted to be a part of the committee. And so the committee is already going to have near 40 people on it. Lots of our district office that have to start building logistics to make returning to school happen in a new way. We also have principals on the committee. And so we're going to start meeting every Friday morning, starting this Friday until school opens in September. And it's important for me to share that the design of the committee is not that it's a voting body. It's not even a place where we're going to try to build consensus around a particular idea. Given the timeline we're on, meaning we're counting weeks now to reopening, and the complexity of the details that have to be developed by our district staff, we're really going to use the Returning to School Committee as a think tank. So to really share our thoughts and what are we not thinking about, what are we missing, what are opportunities we should consider. And so to use it really as a think tank to inform the process. And then the committee itself is going to be broken into work teams. And so based on what DPI has shared in their guidance, they've kind of chunked all the things that need to be considered, and there need to be procedures and protocols for the new way we're going to engage students. And the work teams are really where individual members are going to really delve into some detailed development and start putting it into our big planning document. So there's some key messages that we're going to be focusing on and continue to focus on in communications. Regarding returning to school, there is no perfect solution for this. And so no matter which way we resolve kind of dilemmas and what teachers need and parents need, there won't be a perfect solution. And so some people will find the direction we take to be perfectly sensical, and some people will think it's a bunch of mistakes. And that's the reality of where we are. We're going to have to keep moving forward, and we're going to do the best we can. We've set some guiding principles, and we're going to adhere to those as we move our plan forward. We will follow public health guidance, but any in-person learning increases the chance of disease spread. Right? As anytime groups come together, I think the evidence is pretty clear that disease spread goes up, and there's no way for us to bring students and staff back to school without having disease, COVID-19 show up in schools. And that's why part of the guidance expects us to have isolation protocols and communication protocols for when that does happen. But I just think I have to be honest and upfront about the reality of the conditions we're in. And the last thing is we need to be flexible. It has to be a plan that we can pivot quickly from face-to-face to all online again, should that be required for a classroom or for an entire school, because those are also likely outcomes as we bring students and teachers back together in schools, that there will be needs to quarantine entire classrooms of students because of an exposure of some kind. And that those decisions will be guided by our public health officials. But that's where we are in a returning to school planning process. We're going to take the time we have to do this as well as we can, but our goal is to share our plan during the first week of August. And that's the update, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lexman. All right, we'll move on to item 8, the board president's report. So we'll take a look at the calendar. Tonight, July 13th, we have a regular Board of Education meeting, and immediately following that, we do have a closed session. Next Monday, July 20th, starting at 5:30, we will be meeting at the Recreation Center at 2450 South 68th Street, and we will be doing a walkthrough on the addition and enhancements at the Rec Center. At 6:30, we will offer the workshop, which is the first draft of the reopening the schools plan. And we will do that both at the Rec Center, and there will be a Zoom link available to join remotely as well. On Monday, July 27th, starting at 6 p.m., we have a regular Board of Education meeting. And on Monday, August 10th at 6 p.m., we have a regular Board of Education meeting as well. Do any board members have any community updates or anything that they'd like to add? Kristen?
Yeah, I just want to do a big celebration. Congratulations. I was able to be at West Dallas Central from 8:30 in the morning to 12:45. The admins and teachers cheered for every single kid like it was the first time they cheered that day. It was just phenomenal. The families made such a great effort, like so many kids' faces on placards and noisemakers. And we had a party boat and a party bus and a stretch Hummer. It was insane, but it was really wonderful that every kid got their moment. I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who was really welcoming to just let me be there. And the icy pops they gave us were fantastic, but we should have taken them up on the sunscreen. But it was a really, really wonderful day, and I'm just really proud about how this community rallied around our kids.
Great. Any other board members? Noah?
Yeah, I'd like to echo Kristen's sentiments. First of all, congratulations to all the graduating class of 2020. It's a very well-earned reward that you've gotten, and we all look forward to seeing what you do next. I was able to attend part of the Dotke graduation as well as part of the Nathan Hale graduation. So again, the staff was all very excited. And first of all, first being able to see these students that they haven't seen for so long. And you could really see that excitement. There were a few tears shed as well. But just congratulations to everyone on pulling off a graduation. And again, none of us expected, none of us wanted, but really I think under the circumstances was the best that we could do and really have a safe graduation. So just wanted to commend everyone involved.
Thank you. Anybody else? It was kind of fun being in the community. We was in and out of West Dallas, West Milwaukee on Saturday, and to randomly see a Hummer drive down the street with a bunch of signs and streamers flowing behind it, or in a parking lot at a restaurant or something getting drive through, and there's all kinds of like signs and whatever. It was kind of a fun, it was like a little scavenger hunt. So it was a super fun day in the community. So thank you again to everybody. All right, we'll move on to item 9, our consent agenda for the evening. There's 3 items. Item 9.1, the approval of minutes from the June 22nd, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting. Item 9.2, the employment summary. And item 9.3 is supplementary contracts. Does anyone need anything separated? Jeff Sikich.
Yes, the 9.3, if you could separate that out, I will have to recuse myself.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So we'll be looking, does anyone need the others separated? If not, we would look for a motion on 9.1 and 9.2.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions on 9.1 and 9.2? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 9.3 then is a supplementary contract. We would look for a motion.
So moved.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, to interrupt. I think we just approved someone.
Yeah, I'm going to do that after we finish the consent agenda, but thank you.
Okay, just one.
Item 9.3, the supplementary contracts.
Second. Brian moved it already.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All right, and so Jeff will be recused.
Yes.
Okay, so we have one recusal. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Great, that passes. Dr. Lexman.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks to the board in the employment summary. You approved Corey Sack as the new principal at Hoover Elementary School, and Corey has joined us this evening. So it's an opportunity for Corey to introduce herself to the board. Many of you already know Corey. She's been working with us for a while and has done really good work at Hoover. So Corey, take an opportunity here to further introduce yourself to the board and why you're looking forward to this opportunity and leadership at Hoover.
Yeah. Hi. I've worked with some of you. I've know quite a few of you already. But I'm Corey Sack. I am so excited to take this next step into working at Hoover. I'm from the district. I graduated from Hale a long time ago. And now I've been teaching in the district. I taught at Jefferson for many years. I was the district PBIS coach while we had the school climate transformation grant for 2 years. And then I had the lucky opportunity to get assigned to Hoover last year as the deeper learning coach. And I love this community of learners. The parents are phenomenal. I've never worked in a building that had a PTA so supportive and so involved in what we do, and a group of teachers that go above and beyond every day to do everything they can for their students. So I am so excited to step into this leadership role with them and keep moving forward.
Thank you. We're so excited for you and for our families and our students and everything that's going to happen at Hoover. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our action items then for this evening. Item 10.1, the 2020-2021 academic standards adoption.
Good evening, everyone. This is again an annual adoption for us. We align the work we do in each curricular area to the current nationally recommended standards or the standards recommended to us by the Department of Public Instruction. We are not recommending any changes at this time from last year to this year. The state superintendent did approve new recommended state standards from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction on June 30th in English language arts, personal finance literacy, and physical education. But we have not had the opportunity to yet review those and update all of our curricular guides and do all of that work before we would align the standards adoption tonight to that work. So that will be work that we'll work on in this next school year. And at those, assuming that they would be in guidance with the work we do each day, as they're recommended but not required by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. Those may be some changes that we have for next year.
Any questions for Deidre? If not, we would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. All right, we will go on to item 10.2, the first student transportation contract extension.
All right, so this is an item that we have really been working on since the week of our school closures back in March. And just to give a little bit of a recap before Aaron Norris gives us some more detail on this, is we finally come to an agreement after 3+ months. We started with the request from First Student to pay 60% of our non-service days when schools were closed due to the safer at home order, even though per our contract, we were not obligated to pay any dollars during that time. So Aaron will walk us through. Aaron's our manager of school services and led those negotiations, and he'll walk us through where we landed with the agreement that really is a win-win for us, for our families, and for our bus company.
Good evening, everybody. Like Kaylin had said, this is going on, I believe, month 4. So I want to thank everyone for their patience, and thank Kaylin and Jeff Borland as well for the time and energy they've committed to these negotiations ongoing. So like Kaylin said, we were asked by First Student in March to essentially submit payment for 60% of the non-service days in which we were not obligated per our contract to do so. Okay. And so, from our conversations internally, also with the fiscal committee, our thought was, if we're going to provide First Student with some short-term fiscal assets to essentially guarantee that they would be viable should we resume school at that time or beginning next fall. We would like some sort of long-term return on our I guess, the money that we're loaning them essentially. So we started off with looking to pay them nothing, and we ended up with this contract, which you have in front of you, the discussion item action. So we have come to an agreement where we believe that this is a really good opportunity for the school district as well as for First Student, where we pay them 20% for this school year of non-service days in exchange for essentially a 3-year contract extension at the rates of 2.5% next year, 4% in 2021-22, 4% in 22-23, and 3% in 23-24. Additionally, moving forward, we would agree to pay First Student for 50% of any non-service days, only such days where the schools are closed due to government action, or should we decide to close school for any certain reason. In addition to those, I guess, changes to the contract, the one major change that we were able to secure is the termination clause. So our lawyer, John Shore, essentially put it by saying that for the last 4 years, we've been operating on a month-to-month contract. And so that was one sticking point when we had met with the fiscal committee, like if we're going to agree to any long-term deal, that needs to be changed. And so the old contract states that they could cancel for any reason, and so could we, for within 30 days. Now, the new contract language is either party has until December 31st of this year to cancel for the following year. So should First Student decide that they want to cancel our contract, we would have roughly 8 months to secure transportation, which we believe would be feasible. And that really is the reason why we feel, along with the rates, that this, is a really good opportunity for us to secure long-term knowns in our budget.
Great, thank you. Noah?
So I just want to be clear regarding the 50% payment for non-service days. That takes effect not in the 2021 school year, but the 21-22 school year.
Nope, that one does start the entire contract, the agreement. Essentially, it changes our 2021 school year contract language. So we would have that 50% payment protection that we would have to pay per a government order to close schools like we had in the spring. So if we closed entirely at all in 2021, we would have to pay 50% of our contract.
The one caveat to that is that
Okay.
we are able, I'm sorry, no, the one caveat to that is we are able, should our plan, as Dr. Luxman mentioned, include, less students traveling to school, if we need to reduce the number of buses that we do need, we are able to reduce the number of buses within our contract, and that would be up to Caitlin to decide ultimately if we did that, but we wouldn't be on the hook to have to pay for any buses that we didn't need that are less than what we have needed in the past.
But if they shut all schools down because of a government order, then obviously we're not using any buses. And so we still have to pay for half of them regardless, which was not in our contract previously, which ended at the end of this upcoming school year, 2021. So my understanding, and Caitlin, I did email you about this. And so I'm confused by this because what you responded was different than what I'm hearing now. So essentially what we are getting, we're guaranteeing them at least 50% of our contract for the next 4 years. And what we have done is received a change in a clause, which basically makes it harder for them to just suddenly drop us as a customer. And then we get 3 years of known increases versus at the end of this next school year, we would have been going to RFP or with some unknown amount that we'd have to renew with at First Student. Is that correct?
Yep. And the biggest thing that First Student hung over our head was that they could drop us at any minute, giving us 30 days of notice, which would have put our district in a really bad spot for the upcoming school year. So it wasn't like a one avenue negotiation. There were all these different factors that led to this being the best negotiation result for us.
Did we find out if that's a common clause in contracts for other districts? I remember asking that in the financial committee meeting.
Yep, it is normal. The other area districts that use First Student, there's 5 of them, I believe. They do all contain a termination clause. That was very
30 days.
The one, yes. So us extending it is different from what area districts have, and is definitely in our best interest now.
Wait, hold on. Kristen had her hand up real quick, and then Gary, I'll come back. Right back to you.
Based on what I was reading and what I've heard, I have 2 questions. One, does the percent increases, do we know other districts are getting that, or is that a better deal for us in the end? 2, as of right now, I feel like we're being like pushed against a wall to make a deal that I'm not entirely sure sounds best for the district. It's not really a question, I guess. I don't know if you want to like defend it.
The first part was a question.
Yeah, sorry.
The question about the increases. So when we first asked First Student to what it would take for them to extend our contract, that's where we found that our best deal was going to be is if we're going to pay any amount now when we're not required to, for us to extend our contract would be in our best interest. So when we first asked that question, they came back with rates that were higher. I believe it was, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong. Next year I think it was a 2.5, and then it was a 6.25% increase, and then I believe a 4, which is higher than where we landed. And we looked at our RFP results from the previous RFP where we landed with First Student a few years ago, and the rates from the other companies were much higher, and rates of area districts, bus companies. So that's where we did a cost analysis of, okay, if we went to RFP after the 2021 school year, which would be our current contract, where would we land? And when we did that cost analysis, we essentially came out to break even of where we would have, if using the assumptions where we would have increased with an RFP and with the 20% that we'd be paying this year compared to this agreement where we're landing now. So essentially after the end of this contract, we're coming close to breaking even, if you will, from where we would have if we continued our current contract, ended after the 2021 school year, and went to RFP.
Gary.
Here we go. So under the contract, where government action, so if the state were to make a closure and we have fewer days, we're paying 50% of days that would be impacted by a state government policy or decision.
Yes.
And if the district makes a decision so if the state doesn't make any decision on schools closing, and our plan for next year either closes schools, or if we were to reduce the number of routes based on a plan that would allow kids to come to school, some kids to stay home and do virtual, how is that handled in the contract?
If it's our decision, we would just be reducing the number of buses needed. If we cancel school altogether, if it's not a government, we pay if it's a governmental action. Aaron, I don't know if you have any qualifying or clarifying.
Yeah. So to answer your question about reduce, so for example, if there was, a outbreak at Wilson, and we said for the next 2 weeks we are not transferring to Wilson, I believe we have to give 3 days notice, and then we would not be liable to pay for any such not transportation to Wilson. if we said that we were going to simply close schools for the next 3 weeks, and that was inconsistent with what the state was doing, and that was a district decision, essentially we have it in our contract that if we decide or the state decides that we're we're agreeing to pay for a student. If first student, for whatever the reason, says we can't, all of our drivers are sick and we don't have someone, we're not on the hook to pay them for that. And most other districts with this 50% in their contract have that in there, that it is a hand by, it's like kind of each party is agreeing that no matter what happens, that the obligation that's for 50% payment for non-service days.
Caitlin, could I just clarify something?
Yes.
So you had mentioned earlier that if we reduce the number of buses that are needed, that this has nothing to do with paying the 50%. So if we were to have to close the school for a week, that would fall underneath the reducing the number of buses, correct?
That's correct. What's interesting and makes it a little bit more tricky is that we have tiered buses. So let's say, and if we're just going with Aaron's example, again, completely rhetorical, or I'm going off as an example, but if, let's say, Wilson doesn't have school because there's a COVID case and they have school closures for 2 weeks, we could reduce the Wilson route, but that bus is still going to a high school and to an intermediate school. So we're only reducing 1/3 of that bus's daily route. We're not reducing that entire bus. So that's where this component comes in, where being able to reduce the schedule, so like the 1/3 of that bus's route, is definitely more likely to happen than to have that high school, that middle school, and that elementary school all not have school at the same time.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yep, and if that did happen, we could still reduce that bus. But for this to apply, this 50% to apply to us, would really be if we completely shut down all schools like we had in the spring and we're virtual learning from home. So that was another component that we talked through, and that's definitely, it could happen. I mean, we've learned anything could happen at this point. But it's more unlikely. What would be more likely to happen is that a single school is closed for some period of time due to COVID.
Yeah, if I could jump in here, I think it's a little bit hard to know fully if this is truly in the best interest of the district, because there are unknowns in the future. But to have some costs that we can project out that are predictable is helpful when budgets get to be unclear, right? We're not sure what budgets will be like. So to have some costs known is helpful. The other piece that maybe helps the board feel a little more comfortable with this is that all of this was reviewed in the negotiations guided by John Shore. And John Shore is an attorney that we engage for contract negotiation purposes like this. John Shore also led us through the big negotiations related to selling, the administrative office building and the other properties on 70th Street. And if you, those of you that remember engaging with John Shore in closed sessions, he's not going to suggest or recommend anything to us that's not in our interest. And so I rely on, the credibility of John, that he's led us into a space that's good for us in the near and longer term because it's predictable costing.
Noah?
Noah, go ahead.
School year, because I think of any school years that we might end up with a situation where we are shut down completely. And I would, currently where the numbers are looking, I would disagree with Caitlin's assessment that it's more likely that we'd only shut down a school versus everything, because things are not trending well at the moment. But that we kept out that guaranteed amount in the current contract that we had, and have it start in the essentially add-on years for that guarantee, because I feel it's less of a risk for the district in that regard, because where things are at right now regarding treatments and vaccines, by in 21-22 school year, things should be much more settled. But that being said, that's why I in the committee meetings I was very in favor of, if we have to add it, make sure it's after the next school year to try and make sure we have the flexibility that we need. The other concern I have is regarding some of the busing recommendations that are. Do we know that First Student would be able to handle what is necessary for our district if we were going down that road? And we sign a contract with them, and then they come to find out that we can't do that because they don't physically own enough buses to be able to do it, or we're delaying class quite a bit in order to do so. So those are my feelings on that. I'm not, yeah, we gave up a lot to get rid of that clause, which seems to be pretty common language in other districts regarding the 30 days. As I stated in the committee meeting, I would be very surprised if First Student just decided one day to drop us with 30 days notice. I think that would have far more blowback on them than on us. Again, considering that it was common language in other districts, and we gave up, in order to get rid of that language, we gave the 50% for the next 4 years. We are getting better rates than original, which is good, but we're also paying them 20%. We don't have to. So the give and take, in my opinion, is more on First Student side of things. That's my opinion.
So thanks, Noah. I'm just going to respond to, so the payment, what we're calling the payment protection plan, the 50%, was a point that they would not concede. So if we didn't agree to that, this whole agreement is off the table and we go to RFP next year. So in order for us to move forward at all, I mean, they have the 6.256, they have the higher increases, and they would not, without that 50% for next year, for 2021, they wouldn't move forward with the agreement. And while the 30-day agreement or the ability to drop us after 30 days was a point that we could say that it could be unlikely for them to use it, and maybe the PR would be worse for them. It wasn't necessarily something that we felt like we could gamble, because if they used it at all, it was kind of like a hindsight is going to be 2020 in whatever route we go. And if we gambled on it and then they actually dropped us, we would be in a world of hurt come September 1, if and when we would be needing to bus our students. So I understand that that is something that that those 2 points are, I mean, we talked through them for hours at length, that they're definite like key parts of this negotiation, but we felt like we ended in a place that First Student felt okay with, and that we were okay moving forward with as well.
Kristen?
I'm just wondering if there's any liability if you have a bus driver who's bringing kids to school that infects the students on that bus and routes. And I'm not an infectious disease doctor, but is there any liability of if they can't provide the buses for our kids if there's an outbreak among First Student bus drivers?
The liability piece is something we're still working through with First Student, and we are working through the cleaning procedures with First Student. We do know that the drivers will be wearing masks when students are coming on onboarding and getting off the bus. So, but we are still working through those components with First Student and with our liability insurer as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brian?
I know we talked, or Caitlin had talked about the fact that we did kind of an analysis to see what our situation would be potentially if we were to go to RFP again. But I guess kind of related on that note, do we know if other bus companies are using the same type of clause in terms of the 56% payment? Because I too I have a concern with that as well, because I think we're in a world with so many unknowns, and I feel, I don't know, that just strikes me really uneasy in terms of being committed to paying something like that when we're already giving them money now that we really didn't need to in the first place. So I'm curious how other bus companies are handling that.
Yes, thanks, Brian. So many districts already have in their contract that they have to pay 60%. So the 50% was a piece that we reduced. They originally wanted 60%, and we came back with 40. We landed on the 50. But that 50, the 60% is actually what many districts already have in their contract. So, and that's what they asked for us from the beginning, was that we pay 60%. So getting down to the 20% for the days, the non-service days in the spring of of 1920 was a piece that we felt confident in. And the 50% language at minimum is standard going forward with bus contracts due to our current situation.
Additionally, Caitlin, there were a number of districts that didn't have this language in their contract and opted to pay their bus company anywhere from 40 to 100% as well. One other point I wanted to make is that when we did a cost analysis on what a likely RFP would come back at, the next closest district that is, I guess, local to us, that has a bus company that's sizable enough to operate us, was getting about $310 per day per bus, and we're at $269. So that is an 11% would be likely we would come back at an RFP. And that's not known, but that's just what the current rates are, and that's Milwaukee. And with how big they are, their negotiating power is 4 times the size of ours. So we thought with these rates, yes, we're gonna lose a little bit in terms of contract law language with the 50%, but we thought with these known rates, that made it likely a good deal.
Other comments and questions?
The alternative, which I hesitate to bring up, but would be if we didn't approve this and we proceeded with our current contract that states we pay 0 and we have our 2.5% increase for next year without a payment protection plan, but they have that 30 days that they could drop us.
I just had one quick question, Caitlin.
Yep, go ahead, Christine.
The 20% that we agree, or this contract we would agree to pay them, that comes from CARES funding, correct? This doesn't come out of Fund 10. This isn't something additional that we didn't budget for.
In 1920, it comes out of our regular budget, as we did budget for, nobody knew COVID was going to be a thing. So we budgeted our X dollar, I don't want to say it because I don't know it off the top of my head, for first student transportation for the year of 1920. We didn't end up paying the full amount yet due to school closures. So the 20% that we'd be paying is for the dates of, I want to say March 17th or 18th, whatever day that school started to be closed through the last day of school. So that time frame where we would be paying that 20% of the non-service days is coming out of our budgeted Fund 10 $1920.
And Caitlin?
Yes.
So to confirm, if we choose to close because West Dallas, West Milwaukee it has exploded in cases, and we choose to close the entire district and not due to a government shutdown. So just confirm again that is the 50% or that is not the 50%?
That, I believe that is, we would still have to pay the 50%.
Does that include if we go start on all virtual?
Yes.
Okay. Other comments and questions? Now we would look for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
We do not have a second on that. So we will, that gets moved to future consideration, correct? Back to the drawing board.
Yeah, without a second, board cannot take action on it. If there is a second and the board wants to vote it down, that's the only way the board can get it in front of itself for action.
Still have a motion on the table.
Can this be tabled to another meeting to get more information regarding our concerns?
Caitlin?
I believe so. I would like a list of questions, I guess, that the board would like us to follow up on.
Noah, are you seconding?
No, I had a question that I was going to give, unless you would prefer they were sent to her in writing.
Yes. At this point, probably yes, so that we make sure that they're accurate. But if we're going to, if the decision is to want to vote it down so that it can come back for future review, then I do believe that it has to be seconded and then voted down so that it can come back in a future iteration.
Okay, if we table it, then we wouldn't be able to do it because it wouldn't be changed, or we could table it and get answers to questions and then maybe pass it or vote it down then.
So I think, and Jeff, you may need to chime in here if I get this wrong, as the parliamentarian. So I think the original maker of the motion would have to withdraw the motion to approve, but there would have to be a motion to table it. Then we could bring it back. If it gets voted down, we can't bring it back.
Okay.
Correct. That is correct.
A motion to table?
So I will remove my motion.
So the
Right.
motion has been removed.
I would motion to table it then until further questions can be
Second.
determined.
So there's been a motion and a second to table for future consideration at the July 27th board meeting.
So the current contract then will stay in effect if we don't take action. And that's the contract that would give first student 30 days.
That's correct.
What date do we have until to make that full contract decision?
Well, I would guess 30 days before school starts, but just reminder that it takes longer than 30 days if they drop us to find a different bus company to get the route set up and to be established.
Got it. So I
Yeah,
believe we need to do,
essentially if they dropped us with 30 days notice, we would not be able to provide transport. It would take us 60 days to find a company and then another 30 probably to develop routing. So we'd be looking at November.
Did John Shore provide any written comments, memo, anything, email on his thoughts on this contract compared to other types of contracts he's put together?
We worked with him both over the phone and via email. So I guess part of his comments are through email to approve the final version of this amendment. Would it be helpful for John Shore to, if we did table this and bring it back for John to come to our next meeting?
Yes, please.
We could do that.
okay, so we've had a motion and a second to table for future consideration. Any additional comments or questions?
Caitlin, thank you for all your work.
And then we need all those in favor to table, say aye.
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 Oppose?
Nay.
Okay, we will table that. And then please submit questions, comments, things to research to Caitlin by Thursday morning, 9 o'clock, so that you have ample time to put that together and go back for any future information or clarification or anything like that. So Thursday, 9 a.m. Is that too late, too soon? Does that work?
That sounds good.
Okay. I'm very specific. Can't just be a random time and date. It's got to be very distinct.
Thanks for all your work, Caitlin and Aaron.
Yep.
Move on to item 10.3, the 2020-2021 school fees.
Okay, this one is an annual item. This is for fees for the coming school year. There is no increase in fees for the 2021 school year. The fees for early childhood half day would be $40, 4K kindergarten half day $40, elementary would be $80, intermediate would be $95, and high school would be $105. Again, the same as the 1920 is what's being recommended for 2021. And a full list of the fees is in the attached board packet. The fees that we are recommending for 2021 are still very much in line with area districts. And then just a important note is that fees may be waived or reduced with the receipt of a qualifying free and reduced lunch application and the sharing form.
Questions or comments? Jeff?
Just one quick question. On the instrument rental fee, if the instrument is damaged, do the individual families pay for that? Or is there some kind of insurance included with this?
Our district does utilize those a portion of the fees for instrument repairs. So I would say, I guess it depends on the extent and intention of the damage, but generally our district would pay for those fees.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments regarding the proposal? Noah?
Just real quick, do we have a ballpark of about how many free and reduced are getting the fees waived, a percentage? 40%, 20%? Do you have any idea?
I know it's less than our actual percent of free and reduced families, but I can look into that. How many families are submitting that form?
Just a percentage would be fine of those that have them waived. I don't
Sure.
need exact numbers.
Yep, I can look into that.
Any other questions or comments? All right, now we look for a motion.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's great. Thank you very much. And then going on to item 10.4, the summary of benefits.
Alrighty, so this one is, we have now an outlined benefit summary for our 4 various employee groups. And we're really excited to have an updated version of these because they will be very helpful for our staff and for us to remain transparent in our benefits for active staff and also those who are interested in West Allis, West Milwaukee, and our new hires. So a really nice outlined version of the benefits that we offer. And just 2 changes that I want to point out that are from our previous approvals is that our workers, one falls under the bucket of workers' compensation. And while our workers' comp benefit itself is staying the same, workers' compensation pays out 2/3 of an employee's weekly wages. The opportunity for an employee to supplement their workers' comp benefit is changing. So previously, employees were able to supplement their workers' comp with a 1/3 sick day, and that is not actually best practice per talking with area districts and as per recommendation of our insurance agent. So employees with the approval of this will no longer be able to supplement their workers' comp benefit with a 1/3 sick day. And workers' compensation is just designed to assist employees in getting healthy and back to work as soon as possible. So that utilizing of the 1/3 sick day is found to not incentivize staff to come back to work, as they're actually receiving more than 100% of their pay because workers' compensation is on a tax-free basis. And this one went through our committee. We talked through it at length and has been in board updates as well. And then the other update is that we are updating our threshold for which employees will be eligible for short and long-term disability. And this is more so just so that it's easier for our benefits office to administer. We were using an outdated criteria measure of 600 hours, and all of our other benefits, aside from WRS, the criteria measures are hours per week, not hours per year. So when a new employee is hired, the new eligibility criteria for short and long-term disability will be those who work at least 20 hours per week rather than 600 hours per year. And then all current employees will be grandfathered under the previous eligibility criteria, and those hired July 1, 2020 and moving forward will fall under the new eligibility criteria. And I just wanted to mention that most districts, we did a survey in the area, they use a criteria measure of 20 hours and 30 hours. It's pretty much split. So being on the 20-hour side is still the low end of that eligibility criteria for short and long-term disability. Any questions or anything on those?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much. Caitlin, thank you for everything tonight. You were certainly rolling through everything. So thank you very much for all of those things and for taking all those questions and everything. Okay, so we are at we'll take a quick break, a 5-minute recess to get on to executive session. So we'll see everybody over on the other link for the executive meeting. We are currently at recess.